This video is going to offer some advice on the planning and recording of podcasts, and I'm going to do this by drawing on some key lessons that I've learned from not only making podcasts but also videos. At the time of making this video, I've published almost 200 videos on my YouTube channel and over 30 podcasts on a few SoundCloud accounts. I've learned a lot in the process and gotten better over time, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I've worked it all out, that I've mastered the art of making podcasts and videos, because learning by doing is an ongoing and evolutionary process, and that's something lifelong learners always need to be aware of and acknowledge. However, one universal rule that I've learned is that planning is really valuable. There are varying degrees of planning and scripting in all of my media, from a series of post-its to a full script. And the more complex the media I make, the more planning there needs to be. Of course, there are some things that you can just never plan for. I've found that not only does planning make for more effective and engaging media content, but the more planning you do, the more time you save, in both the recording and the editing phases. To demonstrate this, I'm going to leave my scripted narration here and include a section of a video I made a few years ago on planning videos.
For instance, in this video, I'm not reading from a script at the moment, so I'm going to need to pause, go back, edit afterwards, to try and get this voiceover matching up to exactly what I want it to say. Sometimes I've just got the main points in my head and I'll run with it. What I do is really amateur media production, and as much as that might not sound like it's professional media production that gets viewed a lot, think about what most people are watching most of the time every day. Really, we could estimate that sometimes 95% of what people watch on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube is not done in a TV studio. I would argue, and I've argued for some time, that the strategic amateur can be perceived as more professional than the hyper-professional themselves, and that comes out of the selfie moment and YouTube culture generally, where authenticity, the nature of authenticity, is changing all the time. I like being spontaneous in my videos. I don't want to read from a script all the time. I don't always even use notes, and that can make it a very time-consuming process. And I'll give you some insight here by drawing on a video that I made in 2015 into what can happen both in terms of the serendipitous moments of creativity that you can't plan for, you can't script, but also the more annoying moments where you've just put yourself into a tricky position and you need to spend some time working things out.
Firstly, thank you to all those students who have been really actively creating things in seminars and outside them. It's great to see, and if you haven't looked at the ALC 201 hashtag recently, well, please make sure you do. Sorry, it's getting a little late and Tiffany's going to fall asleep soon. Please make sure you do have a look at the hashtag because there's some really, really great stuff there. Good girl. This me lecture is basically... the purpose of this me lecture, apart from just... Tiffany, you want something? You want something?
And the student responses to that video were really interesting, because most students who I talked to in seminars after they watched that video thought that I was pretending there, that that was all an act.
You want to get down? Yeah? Okay.
I can assure you that it wasn't. That happens quite a lot.
With all that said, I've been doing more and more planning when I make media recently. When I decided to launch a new series of podcasts in 2018, I took my planning to the next level. I always develop full script for my narration, just like I have for this video, although even here the process involved can vary. I remember when I was getting ready to make episode 1 of Social Media Stories, the very first thing that I did was go for a walk outside and brainstorm some ideas into my phone. I collected fragments together in a conversation with myself like this, and when I got home, it turned out that the wind had been so strong that I could only hear half of the points that I'd recorded. But because I'd talked it out and I had some notes to get me started, I was able to quickly develop a full script. Sometimes I start with what you could call higher level planning, where I map out different sections, like writing a table of contents for a book or section headings for an essay or blog. I can then flesh out these dot points with a more complete script over time. Obviously, I don't script the conversations that I have with people in my podcasts, but even here there's always some careful thought and at least a rough plan of some questions that I will, could, or might ask. And then I'll script my narration around what eventuates. No matter what planning method I use, the most important thing is to plan well and then be open to change. Sometimes the best ideas come during the recording or even the editing phase. And speaking of recording, you don't need high-end professional equipment like this to capture quality audio. I've used my smartphone to make most of my podcasts, and it's certainly proven to offer a lot more quality than standard computer headsets and particularly inbuilt laptop microphones, which can be really unclear. I highly recommend spending a bit of time trying things out and seeing how they sound. To offer some rather obvious advice, make sure you speak clearly and that you don't record with a lot of background noise nearby. I usually find myself recording late at night to avoid passing traffic, and it's worth trying different locations in your house out. For example, I find that the acoustics of my more enclosed study don't lend themselves to a quality recording as much as sitting on the floor outside my study or in the living room where there is a bit more open space. And as a final piece of advice, when you're reading from a script, try to avoid making it sound like you're reading, or at least make it sound like you're reading as little as possible. The key to doing this is to vary your tone. I'm reading off a script right now, and while you might have assumed that I was, the main thing I want to avoid is you noticing that I'm doing it. This will take some practice. You'll have a lot of takes. Don't assume that I've made this video in one attempt. I'm sure you'll agree that me saying the less you sound like you're reading, the more engaging your podcast will be, sounds much better than the less you sound like you're reading, the more engaging your podcast will be. As with so many other things, you will improve over time as you learn by doing. Good luck.